Inspiration, it's not so much like, it was not like an image or something like this. It happens sometimes that I have an image and I try to build up a story around this, but this time it was not the case. I was talking with Jean Desforêts, who is now my producer, but who was not at the time, and we're talking about a cannibal movie that had just been released or something, and we talk about cannibalism in films. And I told him that, for me, I didn't understand why people did not make movies with a cannibal as the main character in order to study how they become cannibal. It started to make sense with what I've done before, like my short and my TV feature, which work around body metamorphosis and transformations that always have some kind of moral consequences afterwards in the building of the character and of the character's morals. And I thought that cannibalism was very interesting because it's something that people would tend to reject as not being part of humanity. Like they would qualify cannibals as being monsters or inhumans. And I thought, yeah, that's weird because cannibalism is actually part of the three taboos of humanity with murder and incest. So if it's part of the three taboos of humanity, it means that it belongs to humanity that is in us. And I think this is why people tend to repress it as not being their own, because it's very scary to be in touch with this part of humanity. The idea was to build up the empathy on the character since the very beginning of the movie. Because when you know that she's gonna commit such an act in the middle of the movie, an act that could actually provoke rejection on the part of the audience, you really need to have your audience with her since the very beginning. So I decided to build up this context of hazing in the campus, because I thought hazing, it's something like, it's an establishment, it's anonymous. Most of the time, you hear like a lot of different people with no faces yelling stupid orders or creating like absurd rules at her, and she has to do it. She doesn't know why. And there is something like, I knew that the audience would instinctively reject or rebel against and then root for her. I knew that it would resonate in a very political and intimate way. She's not a vampire and she's not a werewolf. She's a real person. Sorry, the coming of age part and the genre part of the movie were always, for me, in the same gesture. What interested me at this moment of young teenage years or young adult years is that you really go through metamorphosis that is also physical, because your body changes and everything, and also there is the sexuality that becomes a stake in your life when it was not before, and everything, and you also get out of your parents' little shell, and you start building up your own opinions about the world. And so I think this whole theme of metamorphosis is incredibly cinematographic, and it's incredibly genre cinematographic, if I can say. You know, it's very, because you can actually see it visually. I mean, you can see a body morph visually, and we know what it means for the character. You know, it's really, really efficient. And this is why I love the grammar of body horror for that, because it's incredibly visual and incredibly relatable. Because again, we're not talking about fantasy things or another world that doesn't exist. It's something that I really believe in, that we can escape boxes in any way. My movie is not easily labelable. Of course, there are not a lot women filmmakers in the genre industry. I don't believe that it's because women are less interested in the genre. I think it's actually not true. When you go to see a horror movie in a theater, you see a lot of women there. I have a lot of friends who are completely into horror and everything. So for me, it's really the only reason that I can perceive is that maybe they're not taken seriously in this genre. This is something that I really don't understand. We feel violence and anger as much as anyone else in this world. I mean, everyone does. Feelings are feelings and they belong to everyone. I think actually these things start to change, because you see with Jennifer Kent, with Anna Lily Amirpour, I mean, you see more and more, I think, strong female filmmakers interested in genre and trying to work on this. But I think we have to stop trying to make comparison like, oh, does it look like it's a woman that made it, or does it look like a man that made it? I mean, they're just people making movies. That's nothing more than this, you know. David Cronenberg is a major influence in my life. There is something so human in what he proposes. The way he sees mortality, the way he sees the bodies, is for me at the same time incredibly distant, almost like a scientific distance that he has to it, but at the same time incredibly rooted in a fear that you can feel him. He wants to overcome, in a way, you know. And I really like, for example, the fact that he makes very few camera movements, especially in his early work, you know, around the bodies especially. It's very few camera movements, and you have a lot of still shots that are actually pretty center framed. And sometimes I think this frontality is really so that the audience cannot look anywhere else. Like, you can't lie to yourself. This is the human condition. We are all gonna putrefy and die. And this is what it is. At the same time, you can also become a hybrid, you know, and this is also beautiful. It's monstrous, but at the same time, it's very hopeful to know that you can become another creature and everything. So I like this kind of hard look on mortality, but at the same time, with a lot of love for it. For me, the main goal was for them to, the first thing is I want them to feel full afterwards, like after a good meal, you know. I really love movies, as I said, crossover movies, in which you go through many, many emotions. Like when you watch Kill List by Ben Whitley, you're like, every single moment, you're like, where am I going? What is it doing? Why am I laughing? Why am I scared? What is this movie and everything? You're like constantly questioning what you are seeing. And it makes you incredibly active because you're really, really like, you're a part of the discovery of this movie. You're really part of it with the characters who discover also the craziness of this world. This is brilliant because you're so alive afterwards. So this is really what I hope the audience can feel at the end of my movie. Not trying to find answers immediately or like, oh, I got it, or things like that. I think movies don't have to be easy, you know. The important thing is the impact they have on you afterwards and what traces they leave in you.